My name's Daniel, and if there's one thing I never expected, it was to be called a thief by my own uncle in front of my entire family. The night it happened, we were all gathered in my parents' dining room, a full house, the table stretched with extra chairs, laughter bouncing off the walls. I had just walked in with a bottle of wine, thinking it was going to be another noisy, harmless family dinner. But instead, it turned into the night that split everything open. Uncle Robert was sitting at the head of the table like always, red-cheeked from drinking, his voice already booming over everyone else's. He had this way of controlling the room, not because people respected him, but because he demanded it. He had money, influence, and that smug look like he always knew something you didn't. I had barely set the wine down when he suddenly slammed his hand against the table, rattling the glasses. "Where's my money, Daniel?" he barked. The room went silent. Forks stopped mid-air. My cousin froze with a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. I blinked, not even sure I'd heard him right. "What?" I said slowly. Robert leaned back in his chair, lips curling into a bitter smile. "Don't play dumb. You think I wouldn't notice? I know you stole from me." The words sliced through the air, sharp and final. My heart thudded hard in my chest. For a second, I laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline, the wink, the old uncle's bad joke. But his face didn't change. His eyes burned with something close to hatred. "Robert, what are you talking about?" my mom asked, her voice high, brittle. He ignored her and pointed directly at me. "Thousands gone. Vanished. And you're the only one who had access. Don't look so shocked, Daniel. You've always been desperate, haven't you?" I felt every set of eyes swing toward me. My aunt whispered something to her husband. My younger cousin scooted his chair away, like I was contagious. The wine bottle still sat unopened in my hand, suddenly heavy, useless. "I didn't take anything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Robert smirked, shaking his head like he'd already won. "Liar. You can deny it all you want, but I've got proof." The room buzzed with hushed voices. My father sat frozen, lips pressed tight, not defending me, not saying anything. That hurt more than Robert's words. And in that suffocating silence, I realized something horrifying. No one was standing up for me. The silence didn't last long. It broke all at once, like glass shattering into jagged pieces. "Daniel, tell me this isn't true," my mother whispered, her voice trembling. Her hands were clutching the napkin in her lap so tightly that it tore in half. Before I could answer, Robert leaned forward, savoring the attention. "Don't waste your breath, Margaret. He can't deny what's already in front of me." He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket and slapped it onto the table. The sound echoed through the room. Everyone craned their necks as if the paper itself carried some divine truth. I couldn't see what was written on it from where I sat, but the smug certainty in Robert's expression made my stomach twist. My cousin Jenna squinted. "Is that a bank statement?" Robert gave her a sharp nod. "Exactly. Large withdrawals from my account last month. Done online. And who just happened to be helping me with my laptop that week." His gaze landed on me like a spotlight. "Daniel." The room buzzed louder now, whispers rising like static. I felt heat rising to my face. "That's not possible," I said, my voice breaking with anger. "I don't even know your banking password." "Please," Robert sneered. "You're good with computers, aren't you? You probably didn't even need it." The accusation hit me like a slap. My chest tightened, every eye in the room drilling into me, waiting for me to defend myself, or watching me unravel. My aunt crossed her arms. Why would he need to do something like that, Robert? Robert grinned bitterly. Why? Because he's broke. Because he's always been jealous of me, of what I built. The words stung more than I expected. Not because they were true, but because he knew exactly how to twist the knife. My job wasn't glamorous, I wasn't rich, but I wasn't desperate either. Still, the idea of me stealing fed neatly into the image he wanted to paint, the struggling nephew who finally snapped. Dad finally spoke, his voice gravelly. Daniel, did you? My heart cracked right there. The fact that he had to ask, that he couldn't just look at me and know, burned worse than any accusation Robert could throw. I stood up slowly, the chair legs screeching against the floor. No, I didn't steal from him. And if you think I did, then maybe you don't know me at all. Robert chuckled darkly, raising his glass of whiskey like he was toasting my downfall. Don't worry, Daniel. The truth always comes out. And when it does, you'll wish you had confessed sooner. The family dinner was over, though no one had touched their food. The only thing served that night was suspicion, and I was the main course. The days after that dinner felt like walking through a storm without an umbrella. Every phone call, every glance, every silence carried suspicion. It started the very next morning. My phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Jenna. Daniel, just be honest with us. If you took the money, maybe you can pay it back before it gets worse. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. She wasn't asking if I had taken it, she was asking when I was going to admit it. By noon, my aunt had called my mother in tears, begging her to do something before Robert calls the police. By evening, I noticed my uncle had already told half the extended family. The whispers spread faster than I could keep up. At the grocery store 2 days later, I bumped into my neighbor Mrs. Carter. She gave me the tightest smile I'd ever seen. Daniel, she said carefully, I hope you're sorting out your little issue. I froze. She shouldn't have known anything. But Robert's voice carried far, and gossip traveled even farther. By the weekend, I stopped answering calls altogether. My own parents barely looked me in the eye, their silence a verdict louder than words. I wasn't just accused anymore, I was branded. On Sunday evening, I walked into my father's study, desperate for a straight conversation. He was hunched over his desk, flipping through the very same bank statement Robert had flaunted at dinner. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, you don't really believe this, do you? He sighed heavily, not looking up. Daniel, you're a good man. But Robert has proof. And we can't just ignore it. Proof. I snapped, stepping closer. A piece of paper that could have been faked, altered, anything. Do you really think I'd steal from family? He finally looked at me, his eyes tired. I want to believe you. But Robert insists he's certain. And if he goes to the police? My chest burned. Let him. I shouted. Because once they actually investigate, they'll see I didn't touch a cent. But deep down, a darker thought gnawed at me. What if Robert had manufactured this entire thing? The man had always been controlling, manipulative. If he wanted to ruin me, he'd know how. That night, lying awake, I realized something chilling. If Robert was willing to destroy me over money, then he must be hiding something far worse. And I was going to find out what it was. I started with the so-called proof. The bank statement Robert had waved like a trophy. My father hadn't noticed, but during dinner I'd caught a glimpse of the paper, just enough to see the header. It wasn't even from Robert's usual bank. That was the first crack. The next morning, I drove across town to the branch Robert always used. I still had an old joint account there from years back, so walking in didn't raise any eyebrows. I asked to speak with a manager, a woman named Claire who'd known our family for ages. "Claire," I said carefully, "my uncle is claiming I withdrew thousands from his account. Can you confirm if there's been any unusual activity?" She frowned, tapping at her computer. After a minute, she shook her head. "His accounts here are normal. No large withdrawals, no reports of fraud." My stomach flipped. "Are you sure?" She glanced up at me, a little sharper now. "I'm very sure. If something like that had happened, I'd see it." "Why?" I forced a smile, mumbling something about family drama, and thanked her. But as I walked out into the cold air, my pulse was racing. Robert's story was already falling apart. That evening, I confronted my mother quietly in the kitchen while Dad watched TV in the other room. "Mom," I said, lowering my voice, "did you actually see Robert's account yourself?" She hesitated, her hands stilling over the sink. "He showed us the paper, Daniel. We all saw it." "Right," I pressed, "but did anyone actually verify it?" "With his bank." Her lips tightened. "No. But why would Robert lie?" I almost laughed at the question. My uncle had spent his life cutting corners, bragging about tax loopholes, scheming in ways that somehow always ended with him richer and someone else poorer. Why would he lie? Because it was second nature to him. Later that week, while everyone else kept their distance from me, I drove past Robert's office. His car wasn't there. Odd, since he usually worked late. A hunch pushed me further. I followed the streetlights out of town and, after a while, spotted his car, not at home, not at work, but parked outside a run-down building with a flickering neon sign, Riverside Casino. My Uncle Robert, the man who had accused me of stealing, was walking in through the side door with a nervous glance over his shoulder. And suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. I sat in my car across the street, watching the neon glow of the casino sign flicker against Robert's windshield. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Gambling. It made too much sense. The missing money, the late nights, the sudden rage at me. He wasn't trying to find a thief. He was trying to make one. The thought lodged deep in my chest. Robert needed a scapegoat. And I was convenient. The next day, I returned to the casino in daylight, pretending I was just another customer curious about the place. The inside reeked of cigarette smoke and desperation. Men hunched over slot machines, eyes glazed. Dealers flipped cards with mechanical precision, not caring who won or lost. At the cashier's counter, I asked casually, "Hey, does Robert Thompson still come around?" The clerk, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, raised an eyebrow. "Thompson? Yeah, he's here plenty. Big spender. Not always a big winner though." He chuckled, sliding a stack of chips across the counter to someone else. My pulse quickened. "How big are we talking?" The man shrugged. "Couple thousand a night sometimes. Last week, I think he dropped close to 10 grand. Why, you a friend of his?" "Something like that," I muttered, backing away. 10 grand. That wasn't money disappearing mysteriously, it was Robert bleeding it out onto green felt tables and slot machines. That evening, when I walked into my parents' house, the air felt heavier than usual. My father was at the table again with that cursed bank statement spread in front of him, my mother pacing behind. Robert sat there too, smug as ever, nursing a glass of whiskey. "Finally," he said, as though I'd been summoned like a servant. "Are you ready to confess, Daniel? Make this easier for everyone." I dropped into the chair across from him, my voice steady. "Confess to what?" "Covering for your casino problem." The room froze. Robert's glass clinked against the table as his hand jerked. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," I said, leaning in. "I saw your car outside Riverside Casino last night. And I know that's where your money went. Not into my pocket, onto a blackjack table." My mother gasped. My father's jaw tightened. Robert's face flushed a dangerous red. "You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed, but the tremor in his voice gave him away. I smirked for the first time in days. "Oh, I think I do. And I'm done letting you use me as your scapegoat." The truth had cracked through the surface. But what I didn't know then was how deep Robert's secret really ran, and how ugly it was about to get. Robert's laugh was sharp, forced, the kind of sound that cracked at the edges. "A casino? Really, Daniel? That's the best you've got? Next you'll say I'm running around with the mob." But his eyes gave him away, darting, restless, desperate. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. "Robert, is it true? Have you been gambling?" Robert slammed his palm on the table so hard the glasses rattled. "Don't you dare turn this on me. Daniel's lying because he's cornered. He stole, he got caught, and now he's spinning some ridiculous story to save face." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "Robert, Daniel wouldn't just make this up. Wouldn't he?" Robert snapped, his face twisting. "He's always envied me. My house, my business, the respect I get in this family. He wants to tear me down. That's what this is about." I felt the rage bubbling, but I forced my voice calm. "Then explain this." I pulled my phone from my pocket and set it on the table. I'd taken a photo of Robert's car outside the casino, neon sign glowing above it like a damning halo. "That's not Photoshop. That's your car. Same plates. Same dent on the bumper." Dad leaned closer, squinting. His face went pale. "Robert." For the first time, Robert didn't have a quick answer. His mouth opened, then shut. His eyes flicked between me, my father, and the photo. The room thickened with silence. Finally, he sneered. "So what if I was there? A man can go anywhere he wants." "Doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," I shot back. "You're bleeding money at those tables, and instead of admitting it, you pinned it on me. You didn't just lie, Robert. You tried to destroy me to cover your own mess." Mom whispered, horrified. "My God!" Robert's mask cracked then. His jaw tightened, veins bulging at his temples. But instead of admitting the truth, he leaned forward, eyes burning with something darker. "You think you're clever, boy? You think digging around makes you a hero? Careful." His voice dropped to a dangerous low. "There are things about me you don't want to uncover. Things that will ruin more than just me." A chill ran down my spine. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. He wasn't bluffing. I could hear it in the way he said it. Robert wasn't just hiding gambling debts. He was hiding something bigger. Something poisonous. And I had just scratched the surface. The warning in Robert's voice stuck with me long after I left my parents' house. Things you don't want to uncover. It wasn't the sound of a man defending himself. It was the sound of someone desperate to keep the lid on a boiling pot. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind spun with possibilities. Gambling debts, shady business deals, maybe worse. I knew Robert had money, but no one ever asked how he kept it flowing. He flaunted his wealth at family gatherings, bought flashy cars, but something about it never added up. The next morning, I called an old friend of mine, Eli, a guy I went to college with who now worked in corporate investigations. I told him everything. He whistled low through the phone. Daniel, if he's covering gambling losses with fake accusations, there's a paper trail somewhere. Want me to dig? Yes, I said without hesitation. Anything you can find. 2 days later, Eli called me back, his voice tight. Your uncle's not just a bad poker player. He's been siphoning money out of his own company, hundreds of thousands over the last few years. Classic embezzlement. I don't know how no one noticed yet, but if the right people find out, he's done. I froze in place, the phone slick in my palm. Embezzlement. That was the secret. That's why he needed a scapegoat. If money went missing and questions started flying, what better story than, my nephew hacked me and stole it? That evening, I drove back to my parents' house. Robert was there again, sitting smugly in his usual chair, spinning the story louder, nastier. Daniel's clever with computers, he was saying as I walked in. Who else could pull it off? He'll deny it, of course, but... I dropped a folder onto the table, cutting him off. Funny thing, Robert. When people start poking around, the truth has a way of showing itself. He went stiff. My father opened the folder, eyes scanning the documents Eli had dug up. Bank transfers. Fake invoices. Company funds disappearing into shell accounts, Robert's accounts. Dad's face drained of color. Robert, what is this? Robert's jaw worked like he was chewing broken glass. He slammed the folder shut, his voice cracking with fury. You've been spying on me? How dare you? I leaned closer, my voice low, steady. How dare you? You dragged my name through the mud to hide your crimes. You wanted everyone to see me as a thief, when the real thief was sitting at this table the whole time. Mom's hand shook as she whispered, "Oh my God, all those times you said money was missing." Robert shoved his chair back, knocking it over, his eyes wild. You don't know what you've done, he spat. You think you've exposed me? You've just signed your own death sentence. The room went dead silent. My heart thudded painfully. For the first time, Robert didn't just look like a liar. He looked dangerous. Robert's words hung in the air like smoke. You've just signed your own death sentence. He wasn't just angry, he was unraveling. Dad stood slowly, his face pale but firm. Robert, enough. You accused my son of being a thief while all along you were stealing from your own company. Do you realize what you've done? Robert barked a bitter laugh. Don't lecture me, David. You've never built anything in your life. You don't understand the pressure of keeping it all afloat. Sometimes you bend the rules. Sometimes you take what you need. Mom's voice cracked as she whispered, "At the cost of your own family?" For a second, Robert looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not regret, not guilt, but cold calculation. He wasn't sorry. He was cornered. Then he turned his fury back on me. You think you're a hero now? Marching in here with your little folder of papers? That evidence doesn't mean a thing unless you take it to the authorities. And if you do... His lips curled into a dangerous smile. You better believe I'll drag you down with me. I'll make sure your name is ruined before anyone ever believes a word you say. My stomach twisted, but I didn't back down. You already tried that. And it didn't work. For once, the room wasn't against me. Mom's hands trembled, but she moved to stand behind me. Dad didn't say much, but the look in his eyes told me he finally believed me. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Robert was no longer the center of the room. He was the man unraveling at the edges. But Robert wasn't done. He straightened his jacket, smoothing his expression into something calmer, more controlled. His voice lowered, almost silky. "Listen to me," he said, trying to reclaim the room. "If this comes out, it won't just ruin me. It'll ruin all of us. The family name, the business reputation, everything. You'll be the ones shunned. Not me." It was his final card. Fear. Fear of shame, of scandal, of being dragged down with him. For a moment, I saw my father falter. His shoulders slumped, his jaw clenched. Robert saw it too and pounced. "Think carefully, David. Do you really want your neighbors, your friends, your church, to know that your own brother is a criminal? Or do you want to keep this quiet, let me handle it, and we all walk away intact?" Mom looked at him like he'd just spit poison. Dad stayed silent, torn between blood and truth. And me. My choice was already made. I stared Robert down, my voice steady. "You're not dragging me down with you. This time, your lies end where they started." The color drained from his face. For the first time, Robert looked like he knew he'd lost control. But he wasn't going to go down quietly. The showdown came sooner than I expected. A week later, the family gathered again, this time at my grandmother's house. It was supposed to be Sunday lunch, something warm and ordinary, but word had spread. Everyone wanted answers. By the time I walked in, Robert was already there, pacing like a caged animal. His voice carried down the hall. "Don't believe his lies. He forged those papers, I know he did. Daniels always wanted to take me down, and now he's desperate enough to fake evidence." When he spotted me, his face twisted into a sneer. "Speak of the devil. Here comes the con artist." The room turned to me, waiting. I could feel every eye on me, the weight of weeks of suspicion pressing against my chest. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I set a thick envelope on the table. "Before you open your mouth again, Robert," I said evenly, "why don't you explain these?" Inside were not just the documents Eli had dug up, but fresh ones too. Copies of wire transfers traced back to Robert's offshore account, along with statements from the casino. Eli had pulled every thread, and the tapestry of Robert's lies had unraveled completely. Gasps rippled through the room as people leaned in, eyes widening at the numbers, the names, the undeniable trail. Robert lunged forward, snatching the papers, his voice rising to a frantic pitch. "This is garbage. All of it. Fabricated by him because he's jealous." But his mask was slipping faster than he could glue it back on. Sweat beaded at his temples. His hands shook. And then Jenna, the cousin who'd first texted me to just confess, spoke up softly, her voice trembling. "Uncle Robert, these transfers, they're signed by you." The room erupted in whispers, shock and disbelief weaving through the air like static. My grandmother, frail but sharp as ever, leaned forward from her chair. Her voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Robert," she said, her tone ice. "You accused Daniel. You humiliated him. And all this time, it was you." For a second, Robert looked like he might fight it. His jaw clenched, his lips twitched. But then something broke. His shoulders sagged, his chest heaved, and the words slipped out like venom. "Fine," he shouted, slamming his fist against the table. "Yes. I took the money. I lost it. I gambled it away. But what was I supposed to do? Admit it? Watch all of you look down on me? I built this family's reputation, and I wasn't going to let one mistake ruin me." The confession echoed through the room. No one spoke. No one moved. And then my father stood, his voice steady, final. "No, Robert. You ruined yourself. And you tried to take my son down with you. I won't let that stand. Robert looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to defend him. But for the first time in his life, the room wasn't his anymore. It belonged to the truth. The silence after Robert's outburst was deafening. He stood there, chest heaving, waiting for someone to rescue him. But no one moved. No one defended him. My grandmother broke the stillness first. She turned her face away, her voice trembling with disgust. "Get out of my house." Robert froze. "Mother!" "Out!" she snapped, her frail hand gripping the armrest of her chair with surprising strength. "You shamed this family. You shamed yourself. And worst of all, you tried to destroy the only one here who still has honor." Her words landed like a hammer. Robert's face twisted, but he knew it was over. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. No one chased after him. The days that followed moved quickly. My father took the evidence straight to the authorities, who were more than eager to dig into Robert's company accounts. Within weeks, charges were filed. Embezzlement. Fraud. A laundry list of crimes that painted the full picture of the man who once sat smug at every holiday dinner. The family's whispers shifted, this time not about me, but about him. For once, I wasn't the black sheep, I was the one who had stood my ground when no one else could see past the lies. But strangely, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Tired of being doubted, tired of carrying the weight of a man's secrets I never asked to expose. One evening, sitting alone on my porch, my mother came by. She sat quietly for a while before speaking. "Daniel," she said softly, "I owe you an apology. We should have trusted you. I should have trusted you." I swallowed hard. "It wasn't just you, Mom. No one believed me." Tears welled in her eyes. "That's what hurts the most." We sat there in silence, watching the sky darken. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small piece of the heaviness lift. Robert's empire of lies had collapsed, and the truth had clawed its way to the surface. But the real victory wasn't his downfall. It was the quiet knowledge that, no matter how deep someone tries to bury you with lies, the truth doesn't stay buried forever. And as I looked out at the stars flickering into view, I realized something simple, something I wished I had understood sooner. Being innocent isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to fight for your own name, even when it feels like the whole world wants to believe the worst. That night, for the first time in a long time, I finally slept without fear.